All right, everybody. Good morning or good afternoon, as the case may be. It is 11 o'clock by my watch in Chicago, so it's time to begin. Thank you for attending this PowerCast, How to Upgrade to IBM 7.5 by Tom Huntington of Help Systems and Peter Graves. My name is Ian Cartwright. I'm Education Manager for Common, and if you experience any technical issues during the presentation, go ahead and send me a message through chat. If you'd like to send a written question to Peter or Tom during the presentation, for that, you're going to use the Q&A area, and they will answer your questions at the end of the presentation as time permits. One note there, we do expect that this presentation might go a little bit long, so there might not be as much time as we'd like for Q&A. And if for some reason you have a hard stop at the end of the hour and we're still going, don't worry, we're recording this and you'll be able to see it on Commons Learning Management System from tomorrow. Okay, so presenting today are Tom Huntington and Peter Graves. Tom is Executive Vice President of Technical Solutions at Help Systems and has been with the company for nearly 30 years. He helps manage the worldwide help system software engineer team that works to integrate and promote their automation and security solutions to partners and customers around the globe. Peter Graves is over a 30-year IBM technical resource, currently working with Converge Technologies. Roles in his career include technical sales, architecting, delivery, and support of IBM and peripherals. Currently working for Converge in the IBM Power 4 Google Cloud, IP4G, worldwide rollout. So with that, Tom and Peter, if you want to go ahead and start, go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you, Ian, and welcome everybody from Help Systems and Common. We're excited today. We have a new presenter with us, Peter Graves. Not new to me because I've known Peter for 30 years here in the AS400 iSeries IBM world. And of course, we have our first polling question. What is your primary IBM OS today that you're running? I know you might have multiple instances, but what's your primary? 7.1, 7.2, 7.3, 7.4, 7.5. And I apologize if somebody happens to have an older primary system. There'll be some challenges, but we're going to help you today understand the upgrade process and how to move forward with IBM. So it looks like we have our results from this. It looks like 7.3, 7.4 as the primary OS level. That is fantastic to see. Those who are in 7.1 and 7.2, it does present a challenge going right to 7.5, and Peter will probably talk a little bit about that today. So thank you, Ian, for that first polling question. Let's move on to our next slide we have here. And we're going to be talking about our agenda today. So Peter, if you want to hit next slide, thank you. A little bit on roadmaps, some things that are new in 7.5, and then Peter's going to go through planning, pre-upgrade, upgrade, and post-upgrade. We have a lot of content. Let's keep her moving here to the next slide. We'll talk roadmaps next. And, part of the roadmap as we look at IBM, we have to also think about the hardware. We know in the last year, Power 10 scale up and scale out have been announced into the marketplace, and those are all available for you. Matter of fact, yet this month here in August, my colleague Randy Watson and I will be talking about how to use Perf Navigator to size from Power 8, 9, 10, well, maybe even Power 7, all the way to Power 10, and how to get the right server set up for you. So that's on the roadmap. And just so you understand, IBM is already working on Power 11. We don't know exactly what that's going to be, but we're at 7 nanometers today. Expect it to be much more. And speaking of continuing on with the IBM roadmap, onto the next slide, we talk about the OS levels. Today we sit at 7.5. 7.5 was announced and delivered in May of this year. And of course, IBM is working on the next TRs, and they're also already starting to work on the next OS level. We don't know what that'll be, but we can expect that in probably about a 2-3 year kind of span is what they're on with new OS levels. All right, off to the next slide. So the future is bright there. Also, if you're not familiar with technical refreshes, this is the way that IBM between OS levels will update the operating system to take on things like new hardware support, like with Power 10, maybe performance improvements, new functionality. We saw actually the new IBM Navigator came out as a TR for various releases, and those are things that IBM does without coming out with a full operating system level. So let's go on to the next slide here. And speaking of roadmaps, again, you can go on to IBM's website and click on it and see the various OS levels that are out there, as we see on this page, 7.5, 7.4, etc., to see roadmap. Because part of the issue that I have when I talk to customers is that people are not always convinced there's a future Well, we just saw Power 11. We saw IBM's working on the next releases. The future's pretty bright for IBMI and continues to be a strategic solution for IBM. If we move on to the next slide, it talks about the support roadmap. Each of the operating system levels typically is supported by IBM for about a 10 to 11 year period. If we look at the, like an IBMI 7.4 shipped in 2019, it looks like 2026, 2027 kind of time frame before it will be out of support. It might be extended a little longer. We saw 7.2 get extended longer because of COVID and this period of time we went through. But again, I mean, 7.5 now is going to take us up into the next decade. Are you guys ready for that? Okay, move on to the next slide. And then, of course, the marketplace study. Help Systems is a sponsor of the IBMI marketplace study. We've been doing that for 8 years. We're going to be doing it again for 9 years here. You'll see some announcements and opportunities to fill out the survey in September and October. Look for that to come. We see here people staying current on the hardware. We see that 55% of the marketplace today is on Power 9. Obviously, we'll start asking about Power 10 here this fall. If we move on to the next slide, we also talk about staying current on the operating system, and we see 7.1, 7.2, 7.3, and 7.4. We see 7.3 from last fall was the most common, 7.4 at 26%. I would expect that to almost flip-flop when it comes to this fall, that nearly 50% of the marketplace will be on 7.4. All right, on to the next slide, please. And that gets us to Peter's part in the presentation. Peter, over to you to talk about 7.5, and welcome to 7.5.
Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you, Ian. It's a pleasure being here today. So what is new? May 3rd, 2022 was a welcome to v7.r5 from IBM. A new operating system. Actually, there was also new technology refresh introduced on that same day for v7.r4, so technology refresh 6. But so what's new from v7.r5? So first of all, Db2 Mirror Enhancements. Two things really. Read-only mode, so you're able to put one of your nodes into read-only for business intelligence or query purposes. Also, the ability to support mixed release support. So Db2 Mirror required v7.r4, v7.r5 introduced, and now you can have v7.r5 and v7.r4 virtual machines talking to one another. Also, some updated security configurations, stronger password encryption, default public authority for IBM supplied objects no longer need change authority. They're going to get shipped with use authority. Also, an update to Digital Certificate Manager from a database perspective and programming perspective. Boolean data support, significantly larger indexes, 1.6 or 1.7 gigabyte to 16 gig or terabyte to records to 17 million. Also, operating system has full SQL support. Probably the big thing is Merlin, the modernization framework. It's really a lightweight browser-based development alternative to Rational Developer. 7.5 also introduced some new licensing, moving from, or the ability to purchase IBMI on a subscription based versus perpetual licensing, moving from, or the ability to purchase IBMI from an operating or an OPEX to, or CAPEX to OPEX. Also some changes to backup and recovery, specifically in the IFS area, default change to the async bring capability, which is can significantly increase the speed of IFS backups, as well as restores with progress messages. BRMS and client access, or iAccess Client Solutions 119 also came out. So, and several other things in v7.r5. In order to take advantage of v7.r5, Power 8 and older users, unfortunately, going to need to be on Power 9 or Power 10 in order to take advantage of 7.5. As Tom stated earlier, valid upgrade or supported upgrade paths to V7R5 if you're at V7R3 and V7R4, and about 92% of our pollants are at those two operating systems. One step upgrade to V7R5. If you're at an earlier version of the operating system, it's going to be a two-step upgrade. So V7R2 would require you to go to 7.3 or 7.4, and then you could upgrade to V7R5. And again, those are supported upgrade paths. So why would you consider upgrading to V7R5? Well, the first two reasons are probably the most important. I want to take advantage of new features and functionalities provided at V7R5, but just as important and probably even more important is I want to take advantage of the security vulnerabilities that the operating system is able to close, keeping those hackers and ransomware things away from. From a cost perspective, it's included in software maintenance. So assuming there is a valid software maintenance on your server, it's included in the software maintenance cost every year. Also have the potentially to reduce costs. Tom showed a roadmap with IBMI operating system, as well the support with those operating systems. If you're at V7R1 or V7R2, right now you're paying a service extension or extended service extension tax for that software maintenance. So getting to a current version of the operating system actually would reduce those costs. Also contacting IBM, whether you stay on one of the current operating systems, so that'd be 7.3, 7.4, or 7.5, many times customers can get told, well, you're not at a current operating system, so I can't support you, or you're not current with your cumulative group Ptf, so it'd be difficult to support as well. Which also introduces risk. If IBM can't support you and you have an issue, there's a potential risk to the organization for the workloads running on that partition. Finally, potential reason to upgrade to 7.5 would be a new hardware install. So there's something called a skip the release migration, which provides the ability to go to new hardware and a new operating system in one step. So from a documentation perspective, the Knowledge Center has gotten a little bit of a rewrite, a new look and feel. The URL to it is up on top. So this is where you can do searches on any issues or enhancements or items you'd like to take advantage of in V7R4, 5. And in the upper left-hand corner, it's as simple as changing the operating system version to the version that is executing. Again, from the documentation perspective, there is a document on that website that will detail the installation, upgrading, or deleting of IBMI and related software. And again, the URL is provided. Every time you do an operating system, there's this thing called the memorandum to users. So this again will detail out changes to the operating system and items that may change moving to that operating system. So this would be something that your programmers especially may want to look at, how a compiler may change functionality or database changes may affect code that is executing. Now, the interesting thing is if you're at V7R4, you could just read the V7R5 memorandum to users, but if you're at V7R3 and going directly to 7.5, you'd want to read the 7.4 and 7.5 memorandum to users. So two homework assignments if you're at 7.3 and moving to 7.5. And again, this is downloadable as a PDF document to distribute to appropriate persons. So a majority of the time that will be required in order to have a successful upgrade to V7R5, or actually to any operating system for that matter, is in the planning area. So planning is going to by far and away take the most time. The actual push the button to start the upgrade and to apply cumulative and group Ptfs may take less than an hour, but several hours will be required from a planning perspective. So some areas that we're definitely going to want to take a look at, first of all, is your third-party software and those software vendors. Contacting them to understand, are the versions that are running on the partition we're looking to upgrade, are they capable of V7R5 operating system? And are there any potential IBMI Ptfs at V7R5 that would be required for that third-party software to execute? Also want to ensure that you're still entitled or still have software maintenance on that software. Also, it may be you need to do an upgrade to a third-party software application, and they may change how it's licensed or the licensing mechanism. So there may be new license keys that may be required. This is probably always required if you're moving to a new server, but it may or may not be required if you're just doing an in-place operating system upgrade. From an IBM documentation perspective, again, there's the installing, upgrading, or deleting IBMI software document that we've already talked about. So again, this will be the overall process required in order to do the upgrade. There's also a fast path for installation, which is a more condensed task and step oriented document that will help or facilitate that upgrade and planning. And then 2 checklists. First of all, the upgrade readiness or the pre-planning document, and then the actual go ahead and we're actually going to do the upgrade. So the document to say, here's the step-by-step steps or the checklist for the steps that are required in order to perform the upgrade. From a further IBM considerations, again, we talked about, are we at Power 9 or Power 10? So if we're not at Power 9 or Power 10, can't move to V7R5 of the operating system. Have to also understand if we're at V7R3 or V7R4, those 2 operating systems provide direct upgrades to V7R5. Have to understand the load source drive. So there's minimum sizes required for the IBMI operating system, 35 to 70 gig. And it really actually all depends upon what type of storage you have, if it's internal or external. Additionally, from a load source or from a system mass perspective, need to ensure that you have space on it in order to perform the upgrade. From a server firmware level or the hypervisor level, if you're on Power 9, need to be at VL910_073 or newer. And Power 10, it's MH1010_117_094 or newer. And from an HMC level, Power 9 requires you to be at version 9, release 1. And Power 10 actually requires you to be at the newer version of the HMC code, and that would be version 10, release 1. From an IBM I perspective, you can use the display firmware status command in order to determine the firmware level that the partition that is being upgraded is at currently. And then from IBM website perspective, there is a website that has the minimum server firmware levels. So comparing those 2 will go a long way to ensuring that the firmware is at a valid level. If you're running or if you're using an HMC, again, want to make sure that you're at the appropriate levels there. So from the console management icon on the left-hand side, if you select updates, that will show the HMC level. And in this instance, we're at version 9, release 2, service pack 951. So this would be sufficient in order to do my V7R5 upgrade. Additional IBM considerations. So first of all, have to ensure we have console connectivity. And that's either going to come via the HMC. And by the way, when I say console connectivity, be 5250 green screen connectivity. So that's either going to be provided via the hardware management console or via the Access Client Solutions LAN console. So in advance of performing the upgrade, we're going to want to make sure that we can access the 5250 console. Also going to want to ensure that QSEC offer, we have the QSEC offer passwords for both the operating system and for DST SST. So those are two separate security systems, potentially two separate passwords. And by default, the IBMI operating system QSEC offer password is not case sensitive, but the DST SST password is case sensitive. Lastly, we're also going to want to ensure that we have some type of recovery option, that we've walked through a recovery in the event of an issue, whether during the upgrade process or post-upgrade. In other words, an ERP application or a required third-party vendor piece of software is not working. How could you roll back to either V7R3 or V7R4 in a timely fashion? So again, going to want to make sure we have those recovery options. If you're moving to a new piece of hardware and also the 7.5, that recovery option could be as simple as turning on the old partition as well. So one of those advantages to looking at that skip the release migration process and looking to upgrade and bring in new hardware at the same time. And still further IBM considerations. So I'm going to need to validate that, in fact, we do have a valid or a active software maintenance contract. We're going to want to obtain license keys. So for V7R5, for the serial number that we're working on, and we're going to want to download the V7R5 ISO images. All of that is done through the IBM ESS website. So the Untitled System Support website. When we go ahead and sign in there, if you select My Untitled Software and Software Update, this will actually allow you to perform from an IBM perspective an upgrade to your software maintenance to say that the primary operating system is moving from, in our instance, V7R3 or V7R4 to V7R5. So in order to do that from the software updates screen, either type in the customer number, or if you don't know that, if you use the machine type and serial number and select the caret, it will bring up a screen showing the current IBM operating system level, as well the operating system level that we're attempting to go to, and that information is right here. You can also display the details behind V7R4 and 7.5. If you go ahead and press continue, a screen displaying information with regards to the languages for V7R5 in our instance are displayed. Again, pressing continue. Want to verify that we're at the appropriate language. At that point, we're to terms and conditions. So need to select I agree in order to go through with the upgrade to the primary operating system for the partition. In order to obtain software keys, again, if you select My Untitled Software and select Software Keys, which is right down here, presented with the screen asking for, again, either the customer number or the hardware type and serial number. If you select the hardware type and serial number, it will go ahead and press the caret. You're displayed, well, which version of the operating system would you like to get these software keys for? Either V7R4, which was the current version of the operating system. In this instance, we didn't actually do the the update to the primary operating system, but I can still get V7R5 keys as well. So we're going to select V7R5. And these two screens are actually backwards. So that would present a list of all of the IBMI license programs, as well the license keys available. If you select one of them, the add license key command will be displayed. This would be the command that could be cut and paste into the IBMI command line in order to add a valid license key. You notice as well, you have the ability to select multiple license keys, as well ability to send, download, or install those license keys. So the license keys, if you select install after we do the upgrade, a Java portlet will be displayed, and simply you're going to enter the IP address or resolvable name for the partition, a profile password, select next, and the ESS website will install all of the license keys required. But otherwise, again, ability to download or send them to the email associated with an IBMI account. In order to download the IBMI operating system, the ISO images, again, from the ESS main page, if you select the download licensed URL right here, presented again with a category. So that's the operating system we're going to download for, in our instance, Visa or IBMI, and then which group do we want to download? And we're going to download V7R5. If we select the magnifying glass on the right-hand side, presented with all of the groups or the products that are downloadable. Have the capability of downloading individual license programs or license program products. Also have the ability to download the more customary I-based ISO images and the B group CDs or DVDs as well, as opposed to downloading individual license programs. The Power VM Enterprise selection, that has to do with VIOS and getting to version 3 there. And some companies may have languages as well. So that would be the 5770 NLV. So if additional languages are required, that's where those could be found. So in this instance, if you select next or continue, again, presented with the languages we're going to download. And expanding the 5770 SS1, again, presented with the B group 1 CDs, so 1 through 5 for V7R5. Actually, it's been that way for quite some time. As well, the IBase 01. So the IBase 01 is the license and the bootable license internal code CD as well. So if we select all of those, again, presented with the license terms. So selecting I agree provides a screen where we're able to select our download method. So we're able to download via download director or via an HTTPS transfer. Selecting HTTPS provides again the list of all the software that we selected. And from here, you can select the individual CD to download, and that will download to our PC. So that will take some time to bring down. So the IBase 01 and the 5 groups is going to be about 25 gig worth of information. So it will take some time to bring down. Additional, even further IBM things we need to consider. So we need program temporary fixes, and we need them really for two pieces. So the partition that we're going to be upgrading, so that partition is at V7R3 or V7R4. There are some required Ptfs that need to be installed on that partition in order to have a successful upgrade. And then there's also the cumulative group Ptfs for V7R5 that we would want to load and apply after doing the operating system upgrade itself. So the required Ptfs for V7R3 and V7R4, those can be found at this URL. And again, this website will show the Ptfs required if you're at 7.3 on the left-hand side of the screen or the column, and at V7R4 on the right-hand side. So a suggestion would be to download all of the required Ptfs for the operating system. The screen actually goes down. You can see based on the elevator. It will roll down. So there's different Ptfs for different pieces. So again, the suggestion would be to keep it simple. Just download all of them. Let the machine determine which Ptfs it needs and which Ptfs it does not need. So some of those Ptfs, by the way, are going to be MF. So in all likelihood, if they're not installed right now, they may require an IPL in advance of the upgrade itself as well. So again, something to probably plan for is a potential IPL of the partition in advance of doing the upgrade. The V7R5 cumulative and group Ptfs, those can be downloaded from Fix Central, just like any other Ptfs obtained for the IBM I operating system. V7R5 is out there, and it's kind of interesting because right now there is a cumulative Ptf package available for 7.5. If you select all of the cumulative and group Ptfs available, it's a total of 3 CDs or 3 DVDs right now. So not a lot of Ptfs, but still some required for 7.5. So once we have accumulated all of that information and basically had go, no go steps at each one of those. In other words, if I have some third-party software that's not capable of moving to 7.5, or if I'm on a Power 8 box, that would be a no-go decision. Assuming we got through that entire list and we're still, hey, we can still do this upgrade. Now there's some pieces that need to be done on the IBM I partition. So this is where we get into some of the button pushing now. So the first piece that—
and Peter, this is Tom, just to kind of update. We could probably pick the pace up just a little bit if you can. Okay.
Okay, not a problem. And again, we have some screens that we can breeze through pretty quickly. So again, we have a Ptfs now that are sitting on our PC. We have the ISO images for 7.5 sitting on our PC. So now we need to get those up to the IBM I partition we're going to upgrade. And there's, in our instance, we're going to upgrade via an image catalog. Several commands we're going to use. Work with image catalog, create image catalog. We're actually going to do an FTP. We're going to do an add image catalog entry, and then we're going to create a virtual optical device, and then basically marry our image catalog to that optical device. So example of the work image catalog command. So this shows all the image catalogs available on the operating system. You notice in our instance here, have 2 image catalogs, one for V7R5 IBM I and V7R5 Ptfs. If you select an option 12 next to that image catalog, it will display a list of all the ISO images that were FTP'd up and added to this image catalog. As well, it will show the path in the integrated file system where those ISO images are. There's a command from the work image catalog. We could create the image, a new image catalog, but there's also a create image catalog command. where you can specify the image catalog name, as well the directory of where I'm going to house those ISO images. So at that point, I have a path in the integrated file system to receive my ISO images, and those ISO images are for the V7R5 software images themselves, as well as these V7R5 Ptfs. So we're missing the word Ptfs on that second bullet right there. So we're going to FTP those images up to the IFS, and always make sure when you're FTPing to IBMI, you're going to do it in binary mode. One other consideration might be to use a tool like WinSCP. So WinSCP, free download, drag and drop functionality for FTP might be a means to facilitate that that transfer, that FTP transfer. So once the images are up in the integrated file system, still need to add them. So there's a command. Again, we could have done it from work image catalog, but there's also an command line command add image catalog entry. This is, we have the wrong screen here, but there is an add image catalog entry command. But regardless, there's an easier way to do it. There's an API. It's called QVOI FIMG. It basically, as opposed to do an add image catalog entry for each ISO, instead you can call this program or this API, passing it the image catalog name, the suffix of the files that you want to add to the image catalog, and then a binary 0 at the end, and it'll go through and add all of the ISOs to the image catalog. So one command does multiple things. The other thing we need to do is, so great, I have this image catalog. I need to have an optical device, however, to install. So we need to create a optical or a virtual optical device. That's done with the create dev opt command, create device optical. Specify the device description name and *virt or *VRT for a virtual device. If you press enter 3 times, you'll go back to a command line. In order to load the image catalog, also need to vary on that device description we previously created. So the load image catalog in essence marries the image catalog to the the virtual optical device that was created. So in this instance, the top parameter image catalog name, I'm going to do a *load, and then what's the name of the virtual device? Again, that device has to be varied on in order for a successful load as well. You also notice it's the same command, load image catalog, to do an unload, or to, in essence, divorce the image catalog from the virtual device. And there's also a command to verify. So the verify command basically is the check to say, all these ISO images that I have, are they valid? Are they readable? And you also have the option to sort them. And that sort will put them in the appropriate order for IBMI to read through the upgrade as well through the Cumulative Group PTF install. Tom?
Yes, thank you, Peter. Time for you to have just a little break, a quick little infomercial on Help Systems side, or just some great artifacts that if you're not aware of, the IBMI Marketplace Survey, that's a free download, ungated, that you can get access to. Same with the IBM Annual State of the IBMI Security Study that my colleague Robin Tatum does. At Help Systems, we're always doing free technical updates for our customers. Sounds like a crazy little story, but we get together with you for about an hour and talk about what's new and what's happening on your end and what's new at Help Systems. We also participate in the Solution Edition program at IBM for new hardware upgrades. You can get discounts on software. You take a look at IBMI Solution Editions. And then also want to make you aware of all the great user groups that are around the world for information. And, you know, the nice thing about COVID, if there is such a thing, about that is that you can join any of these user groups pretty much from anywhere. I know in our local Minneapolis user group called Q User, we have customers that are not in Minneapolis. They're in places like the Dakotas, Montana, Idaho, Illinois, and other places. They can join us because we do most everything remotely. So Peter, back to you. And I know you got a lot of content yet. Keep the questions coming in. We got some interesting ones out there. We'll also probably get back to you via Q&A at the after the conference too.
Sure. Thank you, Tom.
Yes.
So back to the button pushing. So again, we have our ISO images in an integrated file system directory. We have a device description, a virtual device description. We have it varied on. We have basically we have everything we need now to do this pre-upgrade task list. So again, this is going to be from IBM I from a command line. So there's 10 steps. We need to basically ensure that we have a licensed program on our DVDs or in our image catalog for each one that we have installed. We need to work with licensed programs to delete. In other words, ones that either are no longer available at V7R5 or that we don't have on those CDs, DVDs we uploaded. Same, 2 and 3 kind of works side by side. Step 4 is we need to, or you have the ability to display the licensed programs. So we'll have the ability to add and replace. And 4 will basically be a culmination of step 1. Step 5 is work with software agreements. Again, we need to accept those in order to do our upgrade. Step 6, work with user profiles. We want to make sure that all of the required IBM I installation profiles are available. Step 7, we want to do a verify system objects. This will determine if I need to do a reclaim storage command in advance of doing an upgrade. Estimate storage requirements, allocate additional space for license internal code, and keep disk configuration. All of those have to do with the disk configuration on the partition. So again, we access this Go License Program, menu option number 5, prepare for install. Brings up a menu of those 10 steps. If we step through each one of them quickly. Step 1, work with licensed programs for target release. We're going to specify our optical device, our virtual optical device that points back to our image catalog. We're going to specify, we're going to look at the list via distribution media, and we're going to be going to V7R5 M0. Again, it's going to spin through, download the license agreements, and validate that each one of the license programs that are installed, there's something to replace it via on those CDs. So yeah, you also have the ability to add additional license programs to install by pressing a 1 next to it. Step number 2 and 3. So work with license programs to delete or list license programs not found on media. So this again is going to be licensed programs that we have installed at 7.3 or 7.4, but there's not a 7.5 corresponding license program to install. Function key 11, if you press function key 11, it'll actually give you a reason why it needs to be deleted or it wasn't found on media. Option number 4, display license programs for target release. Again, it's going to be a list of or the output from step number 1. So this is the list of the licensed programs. And am I going to do a replace or an add? So in this instance, we added the extended NLS support as an example, or sorry, we added the media and storage extensions as an example. So you can see that that is going to be added and not replaced. So it wasn't on at 7.4 in our instance, but we're going to go ahead and add it at 7.5. This can be either displayed or printed out and used for your documentation for the upgrade. Step 5, the work with software agreements. It's going to list all of the products that we're going to install. And the thing to notice is on the right-hand side, accept status right now is set to no. Placing a 5 next to each one of those and presented a screen with the software agreement. Function key 15 allows you to accept all of the software agreements. And after going through that list, you'll notice that the accept status is now went from no to yes. Menu option 6, or the 6th step in that list, is to work with user profiles. Again, this is going to go out and examine the IBM profiles to ensure all of the required profiles exist on the partition in order to do a successful upgrade. Step 7, verify system objects. Again, going to go out and ensure that we don't need to do a reclaim storage in advance of the upgrade. Step 8, estimate storage requirements for the system ASP. This is going to be an estimate on the amount of storage that's required in order to do the upgrade, the additional storage that's going to be required. Step 9, allocate additional space for licensed internal code. May or may not need to be done. So if you go ahead and specify, we're going to allocate space in our instance v7r5, and we want to go ahead and start immediately, this is going to go out in the background if we need to allocate storage and allocate that storage. If you say, I want to do it delayed, it's going to require an IPL in order to complete successfully. And then the last step, keep disk configuration. Do you want to keep the disk configuration, yes or no? So all of that was kind of a hodgepodge of pieces and things you need to check in order to do the upgrade. IBM actually makes it kind of simple. They've created this thing called the pre-upgrade validation tool, and it's going to go through a lot of these steps to facilitate the upgrade planning and pre-upgrade process. So there's a place to go download it from the IBM website. So that link will allow you to download the pre-upgrade verification tool. If you have an old version of it, you probably want to go get the new version of it. The older version won't support 7.5. And the new version, actually, there's the output has changed. So it's a bit more user-friendly. So there's 2 versions of this, by the way. One is an executable, a .exe, and one is a jar file. If you don't have Java on your PC, you're going to want to download the executable version and extract it. If you have the download the jar file, that can just be executed as well. So walking through the pre-upgrade validation tool, I went ahead and started it and executed it. So the first thing is a welcome screen. If you select next, get to the license agreement. You have to select the I accept the terms of the license agreement and select next. And we're going to go ahead and which tasks do we want to perform. So the first thing is we want to check for an upgrade. We're just doing a single system. And then where do you want the output to reside from the pre-upgrade verification tool? I selected the current directory, in other words, the directory that the upgrade tool was installed in. You select next. Going to be presented with a screen asking for name and name or IP address, profile, password. Selecting next allows you to specify the current release is at 7.4, that you don't get to change, but the target release, I want to go to v7r5. We would select, in our instance, we're doing a virtual media install from an image catalog, and we're doing it from a local system. Selecting next allows you to specify which checks do you want to do. In our instance, we're going to select all checks, and a screen will be presented. This tool will go out to the IBMI partition and do these examinations on our behalf. When it's complete, stoplight, so green, yellow, red. So we've got a whole bunch of green. We've got a yellow for library list. So there's a potential issue with library list, but we have a flat out failed with our Ptfs not permanently applied. So if you select next, this is the new output. You'll notice on the very far right-hand side, my screen kind of got chopped, but down permanently applied Ptfs is red. If you select the URL, it will give you, well, here's the problem as well, the recovery. So copy the apply Ptf command, paste that to the command line, and if you and I executed the apply Ptf command and re-executed the pre-upgrade validation tool, and at that point, that red went to green, so everything was good. Tom, back to you.
Yeah, I think we're going to hold this polling question. We're going to have it just as a survey that happens after the webinar, Peter. So you can keep on rolling through here.
Hey.
All right. We'll get you to the actual upgrade right now, right?
Sounds good. Yes. Yes. So after many top to bottoms, left to rights, we're actually now at we're going to execute the upgrade.
But it's really all about planning, right? I mean, that's a big part of this. Right?
Exactly. The actual pushing the buttons to do the upgrade, probably less than an hour, and that includes the Ptfs. Now, that has to do with how much processor and memory you have as well. But yeah, planning is by far and away the most time consuming, but it's also the most important to ensure a successful upgrade. So from an upgrade perspective, these are the steps. We're going to load the image catalogs. We'll verify them. We're going to go ahead and execute a couple of the pre-upgrade installation tasks again, depending upon the amount of time that is elapsed since it was first done to the actual upgrade. Just want to verify that the biggest one is probably to verify that I don't need to do a reclaim storage, as well that the license internal go disk space was allocated. We're going to re-execute the PRUV again, just sanity. We're going to do, this says complete backup, but we're going to execute whatever resiliency plan that we had. And then we're going to actually do a power down sys pointing to the image catalog and do the actual upgrade. So from an upgrade perspective, assuming we did all of those things, the actual upgrade is done via the power down sys command. You'll notice we're going to end immediately, and we're going to, our IPL source is going to be start image catalog, and we're pointing to the V7R5 IBMI image catalog, the one that contains our V7R5 ISO image, our install images, and we're going to do an upgrade. You press enter on that, the screen's going to go dark. We're going to all panic and worry there for a moment, and then we're going to start to see some good SRC codes. So this instance, we're doing a C60041CC, which is we're doing the license internal code installation. Once the license internal code installation completes, we'll see the machine do some Ds, some down SRC codes, and then it's going to come back up on the 7.5 license internal code, and it's going to begin doing the base operating system upgrade. And again, now we get some feedback into how far and how long it is in the process. Once that completes, we'll see the license programs and their progress in the upgrade. And once those complete, we'll be presented with an IBMI sign-on screen. Go ahead and sign in. If you type in Go Space License Program, select menu option 10 to display the installed license programs. We're going to want to page down through those, make sure that everything is basically says compatible or installed. Anything that is in error will be highlighted in green. From that same Go License Program menu, menu option 50 will display history log entries for the upgrade process itself. And the beauty is that bottom one, automatic installation completed successfully. That's where the panic can go away. So we successfully performed our 7.5 upgrade.
And that's where we say hooray, right?
That's
awesome.
Where we say hooray.
Awesome.
That's where
hey,
we
just a quick note out there for people. We might go over the top just a little bit, especially with a couple of questions and answers. It all being recorded. Don't worry if you have to leave. You can come back and pick up where we left off. Continue on, Peter.
Perfect. Thank you. So the last piece that we have to do, we have to load, well, the last piece to the upgrade, we have to load and apply the cumulative group Ptfs. So there's a command out there, change IPL attribute. The last parameter, start to restricted state, allows you to IPL the system and, allows you to IPL the system in normal mode and come up in restricted state. So the beauty in it is I can load and apply these cumulative group Ptfs and come up to a sign-on screen and be in restricted state. And further, when that happens, this command automatically will turn back to star no. So again, load your image catalog for your Ptfs. From restricted state again, go PTF menu option 8, specify the device. So in our instance, V7R5 Ptfs, we're going to do an automatic IPL yes. Prompt for media, we're actually going to do volume sets and anything that was downloaded via service. In our instance, we're at 7.5, so there should be nothing there. Press enter, and we'll start seeing the commands. Again, notice volume 1 of 3, only 3 CDs at 7.5 right now. And again, C900-2967 is the SRC code for PTFs. So that's either applying or setting to do a re-IPL to apply PTFs. Once that completes, again, we'll be presented with a sign-on screen. Go ahead and sign on. We'll be in restricted state because we'll use that change IPL attribute command. Work PTF group is the command that will show us the status of our cumulative and group PTFs. Everything should stay installed or related group. Assuming so, we can move on to the last piece, and that is to initialize the system. So once that process completes, you can start the controlling subsystem. So that's going to start up everything on the system. If you decided to do something more restrictive in order to do some testing, you may need to change the startup program, but start subsystem queue control. In our instance, our controlling subsystem. It's going to go ahead and start everything up on the scene or on the system. You'll notice that there's this BRMS prod INZ command. That's a product that has some initialization that needs to take place. That'll be done via batch program executing. If you went into BRMS prior to executing that, the screen would be blue with asterisks, and BRMS would not be very happy. So from a post-upgrade perspective, so we've done all the planning, did all the pre-upgrade, executed the upgrade, uploaded and applied 7.5 PTFs. Before we have the martini, a couple other things that we need to do or consider. So first of all, third-party software, there may be some actions that we need to do there. There may be some upgrades that we need to do. There may be some PTFs we need to apply. There may be some license keys we potentially need to apply. Need to apply your IBM license keys. Again, those we obtained from the IBM ESS website. And then so if there's testing that needs to be performed. And then finally, probably just as important is need to do a backup. It doesn't necessarily need to be a full system backup, maybe a Go Save 22. We have a new license internal code. We have new operating system. We have new license programs. In the event of a bare metal restore, that information will be required in order to do a full system restore. Some common issues. Impact of non-supported licensed programs. So maybe Java, might be AFPs, Java version that is not supported in 7.5 that was supported in 7.3 or 7.4, or a licensed program that's no longer available at 7.5 of the operating system that I'm taking advantage of, but it's not included any longer. Common issue, third-party applications. For whatever reason, we either didn't contact all of them or they're not working at 7.5. This is a pretty common one, an OS 400 mismatch or an IBMI mismatch between a development and production system. You may have upgraded your development partition ahead of the production partition and compiling programs on the development machine at 7.5 and attempting to restore them on the production machine at 7.3 or 7.4. That's going to cause a potential issue, or that's going to cause an issue. So need to make sure that programs are compiled at the level of the production system on the development box, and they also need to be saved on the development box at that version release that the production system is on. For whatever reason, skip the memo to users for that skipped operating system. So this would be if you're doing an upgrade from 7.3 to 7.5, we forgot to read the 7.4 memo to users. There might be some command default changes. Customer or person may have created a library above QSys and copied commands that change command defaults. Well, the command itself may have changed, or the command default may have changed. So those things all need to be considered. Also, changes to SSL and TLS. And then again, failure to contact all your third-party vendors. Tom?
Yeah, Peter, awesome job. You kind of fit it in right at the top of the hour. We probably can do a couple of questions. Why don't you go ahead and move to the information slide from Help Systems, just one more slide yet here. And just to remind people, we are a cybersecurity and automation company. And I know we're talking IBMI here today, but don't forget, we can help you out on Windows, Unix, and Linux with a lot of great things, even security awareness training these days, which God only knows people need, right? So a couple of questions here. Can you still get CD for an actual physical CD? I think you can, but it costs extra money, does it not?
Correct. So that would be, you can order that through your business partner. Yes.
Yep. But it does cost extra.
It does cost extra, correct.
And this might be a tough question. Do you recommend go through option 5 for GoLick program? Do you remember that was a question kind of midway through your presentation? You were showing license program and maybe there's an option 5. I'm not sure exactly where that
license
goes.
Program option 5.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe too detailed.
No, no, that's the menu we did go through.
Yep. Okay. And then the last one was a point about if you want to see your software agreements, there's also a command work software agreement that you can run too that people may or may not be aware of.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. Something I learned today as well.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, there's so much detail. I learned something new about IBMI every day myself, Peter. So it's just one of those deals.
That's the beauty of the IBMI community as well, is the willingness to share. So
yeah, willingness to share. And there's a lot of people out there doing things a little differently than somebody else. But we hope you enjoyed today's session. Peter, awesome job. I know it was a lot of content to go through here in just an hour. Ian at Common, I want to thank Common again for helping us bring this to the masses out there. It will live on as a recorded webinar on the Common website. I also think we'll probably have it on our website too, in case somebody wants to connect it that way. Other than that, good luck with your IBMI upgrades out there, and also stay tuned if you're looking at going to Power 10. We do have a nice sizing capacity 30-minute webinar coming up on, I believe, August 30th with Randy Watson and myself. With that, stay safe, have a great rest of August, and thank you all for attending today.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.